Welcome back, guys. All right, this is the creative side of week 13. Let me hit you with your supplies list first, and then we'll break down each object lesson. First one isn't so much an object lesson as it is a way to make a record. We've done this a few times in the past. If you haven't scratched off this week's circle, that's what this is about. So for this one, you don't need any supplies other than the questionnaire itself and then a smartphone of some kind so you can record your kids' voices, or they can do it on their own. But that's all you need for the first one. Second one is a little more involved. You guys know I can't read about a burning bush and not actually do a fire object lesson. You just have to, right? So this is one of my favorite ways to talk about fire not consuming things. If you were part of the Book of Mormon course, we used this when we were talking about Nephi and Lehi, and it was awesome. So we're going to kind of revamp it for the burning bush. For this one, you need the printable. It looks just like this, just a normal little square. You also need a lighter, of course. Some rubbing alcohol. We use the 91%, what is it called? Isopropyl alcohol. You can get it at Walgreens or almost anywhere for a couple dollars. And then you want some long tongs, ideally like barbecue tongs so that you have some distance. But if you don't have those on hand, you can use the regular size and it works out just fine. It's just a little more treacherous. Okay, that's your second one. Your third one, we're going to talk about Moses in a different kind of way and getting over his insecurities. Supplies wise for this one, you just need a 1 liter bottle. You can actually do this with a smaller one, like a water bottle. It's just cooler the bigger the bottle. I did find that a 2 liter bottle was a little too big. It didn't have the same effect. So this 1 liter smart water bottle worked out just great. You also want a balloon, ideally one that's like birthday party size. So not like a tiny one. You want one that's kind of bigger so it's easier to stretch. But that's your supplies list. Okay, let's get into the details. This first object lesson is really easy. So this is Make a Record Week, which, as you know, if you've been part of the course for a while, about every 3 months or so, we have a Make a Record Week, which is designed to help your kids keep their own record of their own life as it's happening. I always give you this questionnaire to kind of help guide you through it. This is not supposed to be something that you do really specifically. You're welcome to, get ideas from this or have your kids fill out a few of them. But my hope here is that you'll focus on the women that have influenced your kids' lives. I think, especially since the Come Follow Me manual calls it out, I think this is a great week to focus on these women heroines in the scriptures, what they did to help Moses' story. Everybody from the 2 midwives all the way to Zipporah has helped in some way or another to allow Moses to be the deliverer he needed to be. So the questions are kind of designed to help guide you through that, help your kids think of women who've impacted them. But because of the way I feel like sometimes I talk about this in the insights, but we overcorrect and we focus so much on the women in stories that we miss the partnership. So just because of who I am, I also give you one that is focused on the men in their lives, mostly because I feel like I want a record of both. I want my kids to have a record of the women who influence them and the men who influence them. The same way I love reading about women like Jehoshaphat, and I also love knowing that she had a husband, Amram, who also must have been involved. I think we honored Jethro as a high priest, and his wife must have been amazing. The wife of, or the mother of those 7 daughters must have also been an equally magnificent person. So I love that we have both. So hopefully with the questionnaire, you'll be able to kind of work through the cool influences your kids have seen in their life and then record them somehow. Like we've said in the past, one of my favorite ways to record anything is to open up the Memories app. It's run by Family Search, so it's free. It ties in with your Family Search account, and you can just make an audio recording. Let your kids go off in a room on their own and record their answers to these questions and then add it into their profile on Family Search so that later they can refer back to it or keep it on yours, whatever works best. But hopefully this will help you take some time to study the women in this week's chapters and also take some time to appreciate the women in your kids' lives, because I bet there are some phenomenal ones to pay attention to. Fire lessons, I know you guys love them. Couldn't resist. This is a burning bush week, so of course we're going to bring fire to the table. But actually this one has a spiritual application. I am not just trying to dazzle my kids with some cool fire show. I'm actually hoping to teach them a critical lesson. The burning bush lesson to me, like I mentioned in the insights, is I think the Lord's object lesson for Moses. He's going to go through incredible trials. I lay out some of those in the notes for you this week, but he has a lot of hard things ahead. And I think seeing this bush that should have been consumed. In fact, if you look at the Google Earth link, you can see how dry and arid this place is. Any bush out in this part of the world is going to be dry and brittle and very flammable. And the very fact that Moses sees the Lord and that the bush isn't consumed is powerful. I think it's a metaphor for Moses' life. I think it's the same metaphor the Lord taught to Joseph Smith in the Sacred Grove, that no matter how bright and fiery the world around him gets, there will be a saving. He will make it through and he will not be consumed. So my favorite way to teach this is to make fireproof paper. It's actually not fireproof, but it will look that way. Okay, so in the printable this week, I give you this simple little rectangle. My goal here first is that you can kind of talk about what this area in Moses' world looked like. Again, we think this is in the Sinai Peninsula somewhere, so it's dry, arid, red rock. It's not like a leafy, pretty bush that you might see in your front yard. And it would be consumed. So the printable is designed to show you that first. Then you're going to show how this piece of paper can actually be consumed in fire, but not be destroyed. And it's so much fun. Okay, so first you have to make a solution. This is a solution that is about 50% rubbing alcohol and 50% water. You're going to put it into a bowl and kind of mix it around. It'll sort of blend on its own. It's just going to look clear. And then you're going to take your printable and you're going to dip it into the water. You don't want it to sit so long in the water that it like falls apart. You still want to be able to see it and read it. So you kind of want to go in and out kind of quickly, but you do want to be careful to coat the entire paper. It should look wet on all surfaces. For me, I used the pair of tongs to kind of dip it in and then pull it out again. Then you're going to take this piece of paper and you're going to light it on fire. So of course you want to like put some safety measures in place, have some water nearby, do it by a kitchen sink or a bathroom sink, and maybe even put a cookie sheet down so that it can catch any drips. Essentially what's going to happen is as you start this paper on fire, it's actually the alcohol that will burn off fast and the paper will stay intact. So as that wetness gets evaporated really fast, it will create awesome blue flames and then the paper will be left on its own. So you want to go to a safe place where you have a few safety measures in place. And then you want to hold your paper by a corner. I would advise you when you hold your paper to make sure you're holding it off to the side. So you can see how my hand is not above the paper because the flames are actually going to go straight up for the most part. And it gets kind of big, like you get a lot of blue flames. So you want to make sure that your kids or whoever nothing is above it. In fact, make sure there's no curtains nearby, nothing. You're going to hold your paper by the corner like this with it all saturated with water. And then you're going to take your lighter and you'll just touch the very corner of the paper. And immediately you will see blue flames go all the way around the paper. It will light on fire and then it will stop. It will go out and you'll have a paper that looks just like this. I mean, it'll be wet, but it'll be the same paper. What's cool about this is you can actually see really clearly how something that seems impossible. Paper is super flammable. It's always flammable. So to see paper be completely consumed with fire and then come out intact is miraculous, right? That's what Moses was supposed to see too. He was supposed to see that you can go through incredible heat and adversity and you can come out intact. It might seem completely counterintuitive to everything you know, but trust the Lord. He can do things that we can't do. So hopefully this object lesson will help you teach it. One of the things I really love about this part of the scriptures is that all Moses' insecurities are included for us to see. The same way Joseph Smith opted to include his insecurities and weaknesses in the Doctrine and Covenants, Moses, who we believe wrote the book of Exodus, or at least had a major role in its writing, he is teaching us about his weaknesses. He's teaching us about his times when he doubted God and how he got out of it. And I just love that about his story. So I think it opens up a gateway to talk about lots of other prophets who dealt with insecurities. Each of us has weaknesses. Each of us has things that we just feel like make us completely inadequate to do the work that is ahead of us. And just like Moses, as we focus on the power of God rather than our own insecurities, we have strength. But I love that in this week's chapters, you kind of get to see that transition happen with Moses. So you want to talk to your kids about some of the other prophets. I give you a list in the notes of a few of my favorites, but there are many more. And then you want to set up your object lesson. Basically, you want to take a 1 liter bottle that looks like this, something clear. I took the labels off mine just so we could see it better. And then you want to take a party balloon. It does seem to help if you have one that's pre-stretched out, just so it's easier to blow. So if you want to blow up your balloon a few times beforehand, before you put it on, that will probably help you. Or just use one that's already kind of bigger. You know, like don't choose a small balloon, choose one that's a little bit larger in size. And you're going to feed it onto the neck of your bottle, just like this. So you'll actually kind of feed the balloon into the bottle and then wrap the neck around the top of it. And then you're going to ask your kids to blow. So this is something that if you've never done this before, it's really hard. What happens scientifically is the air pressure gets so high that the balloon can't inflate. No matter how hard they blow, they won't be able to get this balloon to inflate more than like, you know, a baseball size, because there's too much pressure built up. There's nowhere for the air to go. That's how Moses feels. He is basically saying to the Lord, I know my weaknesses. I know I can't speak well. I'm not eloquent. He may even have a stammer of some kind that probably got worse when he was around high pressure situations. He knows that about himself. So he's coming to the Lord saying, I can't be bigger than a baseball. That's as big as I can get. And what I love about the Lord is he gives him opportunities to increase, things that Moses didn't know. So he teaches Moses signs. He shows him the rod that can turn into a snake, and a hand that can get leprosy and then be cured, and water that can turn into blood. And then he also gives him Aaron, because he needs a spokesman. At this point in Moses' life, he just needs help. And the Lord understands that. I think had Moses chosen to be a little more courageous, he probably could have figured this out and the Lord could have helped him. But the Lord often gives us a bit of a crutch for a while as we're trying to get our feet under us. How you demonstrate that with the bottle is you're actually going to take a thumbtack or a nail. I found you want the hole size to be about the size of a nail. Thumbtack was just a little bit small. It made it still pretty hard to blow. But if you want to start with a thumbtack hole and then widen it with a nail or a screw, that helped. So something that's like a 1/16 of an inch, somewhere on the bottom of the bottle, you want to poke a hole. Then you're going to hand it to your kids and talk about how the Lord gave Moses all these different ways to help him feel comfortable with his insecurities. He didn't actually take away Moses' insecurities. I don't know that Moses ever spoke eloquently according to his judgment, but he gave him ways to be better and to compensate and to have weaknesses turn into strengths. So then you have them blow the bottle, and you'll see really quickly, you can even like blow a few blows in, because it won't, you know, you have a few different breaths in there and you can fill up this balloon. It will actually fill the entire bottle. One of the things I love about this object lesson is because of this airflow, and because you're able to demonstrate, look, you can get much bigger than you thought you could with a little bit of help from the Lord. If you actually have it fully inflated and then cover this hole with your thumb, that balloon will stay open. It will look almost miraculous, much like I think Moses felt. There were moments in his life where somehow, with the strength of the Lord, he was able to overcome. He was able to convince the children of Israel, despite his lack of eloquence. He was able to convince Pharaoh after all those plagues and command people to cross a big Red Sea. Like he has moments where he is miraculously capable of doing things he never thought he could. So as you hold on to that airflow, that balloon will stay inflated, despite the fact that there's no tie at the top. You haven't sealed it in any way. It just stays full, and it kind of looks miraculous. So hopefully it will help you teach a few different points of Moses' life, not just one, but it's a really simple way for your kids to think about their own insecurities and to focus on, what does the Lord give me? Something that seems like a small blessing to us has big potential. And I think that's what Moses learned too. Fire, balloons, printables. You got all kinds of good stuff to work with this week. I hope you love this week of study. I know the notes are long. There's, I think, almost 30 pages of notes. So feel free to use an iPad or something. Just scroll through. Don't feel like you have to print everything, but click on a few things, learn a little bit more, as much as you can take in, because there is loads of goodness in this beginning of the Exodus. I think you're going to love it. It will especially kind of whet your appetite for what comes next week when we see them actually make their way out. You're going to love it. Okay, so if you need any help this week, if you run into issues with the object lessons or you have questions about the insights, please feel free to post something on the discussion boards. You can always find those at the top right of every video. That's a great place to reach me. If you want to find me in a live setting, you're welcome to join me on Instagram Mondays at 2 o'clock Mountain Time. That's when I'll pop on to talk about the insights and the object lessons. I tend to be pretty heavy on the insights because there's always a whole bunch of things I learn after I record that I don't have time to put in. But hopefully on Instagram, if you join me, you can learn a few extra things. I'll also be there to answer questions about the object lessons. So if you have thoughts or ideas or ways to improve it, send them my way. I'd love to hear it. If you have any other issues, feel free to reach out to me. Otherwise, I hope you really enjoy this week. It's a great week of study. It's a solid block of scripture that's totally doable. So enjoy it and then bring yourself back for week 14 because it's going to be a good one.